Brothers and sisters, I'm Jesse with Living Tree Community Foods, and we're here amidst the magnificent edible schoolyard at Martin Luther King High School here in Berkeley. This is one of the wonders of the world. It's a privilege and delight to be here. The students grow their own vegetables, their own salad greens that they have at lunch during school time. And it presages that this world can be a whole lot better than it is if only we apply ourselves accordingly. It is a hope, a portent for what we can become, if we so choose. Now, if you walk onto a college campus, and if you ask the first student you meet, where have we come from? Where are we going? The answer will inevitably be Darwin. It can be said that evolution is the ideology of our age. That man is a sort of animal that has arisen through an undirected roll of the dice, has dominated thought for the last 150 years. The basic mechanism is straightforward. Random and chance variations occur, and those that are useful are maintained through natural selection or survival of the fittest. Now, the idea of evolution through survival of the fittest is appealing. It's basically the marketplace out there projected on to the natural world. Come to think of it, it is a reflection of the industrial ethos of Darwin's time and ours, wherein startups and new inventions and techniques arise continuously. Amidst the war of all against all, as the philosopher Thomas Hobbes would have it. And this war of all against all ensures that only the fittest survive. We have here a fetish. Just as the powers inherent in people are projected onto a graven image in wood or stone, so too has the marketplace been projected onto the natural world. It is the newest theology. It proclaims that we are the product of an undirected random process. We are the result of chance. Furthermore, our ancestors were originally fish, and after that monkeys or apes, and since we are descended from chimpanzees, anything and everything goes. But there are difficulties. Even in Darwin's time, there were difficulties. One small consideration: the fossil record. It records a sudden explosion of life in the Cambrian era. A myriad of living things suddenly came into existence, and this largely without antecedents. Darwin suggested that life was the product of slow, incremental change over immense periods of time. Wholly random and chance variations occur, and those that are useful are maintained through natural selection. Furthermore, according to Darwin, all life evolved from a simple organism and branched out in a tree-like pattern. The fossil record, on the other hand, shows something rather different. It shows most animals appearing more or less at the same time, rather than branching out from simpler forms. The major challenge to the theory of evolution is to explain the large-scale changes that lead from one order or class to another, as the transitional forms are absent in the fossil record. There are plenty of examples of transitional forms at the level of genus and species, but where are the transitional forms at the level of phylum, class, and order? Darwin, a man of utmost integrity, acknowledged this. He noted that the fossil record of his time was most imperfect. He postulated that further research and exploration would yield evidence in support of his hypothesis, and that if it was not forthcoming, it would be a rebuttal. Today, nearly 159 years since the publication of The Origin of the Species, the fossil record has not borne Darwin out. His hypothesis remains controversial. Now let's go deeper. Consider a watch, a wristwatch, a mechanical watch. It uses a mechanical mechanism to measure the passage of time. It is driven by a spring called a mainspring, which must be wound periodically. Its force is transmitted through a series of gears to power the balance wheel, a weighted wheel which oscillates back and forth at a constant rate. A device called an escapement releases the watch's wheels to move forward a small amount with each swing of the balance wheel, moving the watch's hands forward at a constant rate. All of these parts, the mainspring, the gears, the balance wheel, and the escapement, must be present. Gradual evolution in a tree-like pattern just does not do it. You either have a functioning watch with all its parts in place, or you don't. No such thing as intermediate forms here. Well, the complexity of a wristwatch is as nothing compared to the complexity of the molecular devices within a cell. This is an example of what is called irreducible complexity. The evolutionists, you can be sure, have used every sort of argument to try to refute it, but it stands. And furthermore, there is the concept of an ecosystem. The entire assemblage of plants, animals, air and water and cosmos to sustain life. An entire ecosystem. It is not just the piecemeal, step-by-step evolution, but it's the entire ecosystem. Starting from the seas, the waters, the land, the air, the trees, the plants, the animals, the cosmos, that sustains life. This false Darwin mechanism of undirected random mutations and natural selection has nothing to say here. It's without relevance, any relevance whatsoever. Now, there's nothing particularly profound or astute about these considerations. That they are being made 150 years ago, after Darwin set out his view, shows that, if anything, this is a scientistic ideology that has led to a stasis, a freezing of intellect, a freezing of inquiry, and at the same time has crushed all dissent. Let's go deeper still. Let's get back to the Cambrian. Until 500 million years ago, the oceans were almost all devoid of animal life. Then in a geologically brief span of 10 million years, in a twinkling, so to speak, geologically speaking, the waters suddenly became alive, teeming with life forms. The sudden explosion of life in the Cambrian era was in effect an explosion of biological information. A vast amount of information was needed all of a sudden. Moreover, this information needed to be coded. It needed to be organized. Now, one of the great breakthroughs of all time is in the understanding of the DNA molecule. It stores information in the form of a 4-character digital code. The chemical constituents in DNA function as letters in a written code or digital symbols of a computer code. A marvelously efficient language based on sequences of 4 characters, endlessly repeated. The code of life itself. It has an alphabet, a syntax, a grammar, and the capacity to repair errors. Where did the information come from? It could not come from the undirected process of evolution. It required intentionality. It required design. I know about Darwin's finches. All power to them. The size and shape of their beaks adapted to changes in the environment. What is more beautiful? What is more appropriate? What is more essential? Adaptation is essential to life. But in regard to origination, in regard to the computer code from nowhere, Darwin is stymied. The silence is deafening. The idea of evolution was not original with Darwin. In one of the most remarkable events in intellectual history, Alfred Russel Wallace came up with the concept before Darwin was able to publish. Darwin graciously credited Wallace as the co-discoverer. Wallace's concept of evolution was deeper and more profound than that of Darwin. Darwin claims that all biological life can be explained through a directionist process of survival of the fittest and random mutation, as we have seen. Attributes in the organism will only develop when they accord the organism with a survival advantage. Wallace, on the other hand, suggests that there are areas of the biological world beyond the scope of natural selection's operations, and some purposeful intelligence must be called upon to explain their existence. For example, Wallace reasons that man's intellect, his reason, his artistic and musical ability, his moral sense, his kindness, compassion, honesty, and integrity cannot be explained via the Darwinian mechanism of survival of the fittest and random mutation. In other words, Darwin cannot explain consciousness. Rather, this must be explained by an intelligence that guided evolution. Wallace insists that man's mind was created by a mind. In place of the primitive materialism of evolution, we have a natural world that is designed. Wallace enunciated intelligent evolution, Wallace enunciated intelligent evolution, that is evolution as part of a designed and guided universe. In 1910, at the age of 87, Wallace granted an interview to a reporter. It was a bold declaration of intelligent evolution. Whereas Darwin says nothing about the origin of life, Wallace postulates a definite act of creation. As he says, an honest and unswerving scrutiny of natural forces of nature, an honest and unswerving scrutiny of nature forces upon the mind this certain truth, that at some point in the Earth's history there was an act of creation, a giving to the earth of something which it had not possessed, and from that gift, the gift of life, has come the infinite and wonderful population of living forms. Then in a subsequent act of creation, according to Wallace, man is given a soul or spirit. He says nothing in evolution can account for the soul of man. The difference between man and animals is unbridgeable. In reply to the question, but in any case, you believe that there is purpose in creation? Wallace replies, it meets me everywhere I turn. I cannot examine the smallest or common living thing without my reason being uplifted and amazed by the miracle, by the beauty, the power, and the wisdom of its creation. Have you ever examined the feather of a bird? I almost think a feather is the masterpiece of nature. No man in the world could make such a thing or anything in the very slightest degree resembling it. He goes on to say, the scales on the wing of a moth have no explanation in evolution. They belong to beauty, and beauty is a spiritual mystery. What is the origin of beauty? Evolution cannot explain. Indeed, why indeed are a butterfly, a deer, and an antelope beautiful? It seems to me that Wallace nicely summarizes his work when he says, my contribution is made as a man of science, as a naturalist, as a man who studies his surroundings to see where he is. And the conclusion that I draw is this, that everywhere, not here and there, but everywhere, and in the smallest operations of nature, to which human operation has penetrated, there is purpose and a continual guidance and control. So in other words, brothers and sisters, evolution is really a narrow, coarse materialism. It cannot explain the great questions about the origin of consciousness. It says nothing at all about mind or about the human spirit or the human soul. It says nothing at all about how from dust a being arose that was self-conscious, that was able to contemplate itself and the cosmos and proclaim, I am. And these are the great questions confronting us. Surely Darwin has dumbed us down and relegated us to the coarsest and most ordinary of understandings. The great questions that confront us every day, that make us purely and wholly and entirely human, require a perspective far beyond that of random mutation and survival of the fittest. Thank you indeed, brothers and sisters. It's been a pleasure here speaking with you.